Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. Dr. Paul is away again today. He will return tomorrow to the studio. So I'm filling in for him, but I'm also filling in with our favorite Friday host, Chris Rossini, the master of Fridays. Chris, thanks so much for joining us.
It's great to be with you, Daniel.
Well, what we thought we'd do today, Chris, we agreed on, is basically just do a quick update on four topics that are on our minds that we think are probably the most important things to think about today and in the next couple of days, and just give a couple of thoughts on each one. So we'll do kind of a quick update show. Our first topic is big news. The FDA has unanimously, an FDA panel has unanimously approved 17-0 with one abstention, COVID shots for children, for young children ages 2 to 11. Chris, you've got more on that story.
Yes, it's a shocking story, but it's not shocking for anybody who's been paying attention for the last couple of years. And of course, it's an emergency use. And the first question that comes to my mind is, what emergency? Surely there's no emergency for children. There never has been.
Yeah.
And the next question that came to my mind is the 17-0 with one abstention vote. You mean there was no one on this panel that had any questions or concerns? Just go ahead. It's unanimous. And then we heard that one of the panel members, Dr. Rubin, his name was quoted as saying, quote, "We're never going to learn about how safe the vaccine is until we start giving it. That's the way it goes." Well, that's the way it goes. I mean, no, that is not the way it goes. You do not experiment on the entire population of children to, quote, learn how safe it is. If that's the way it goes, why is there an FDA? What do we need it for? I mean, it boggles the mind. And again, with that quote from that doctor, and it was made public, there was no one on this panel, 17-0, that had any questions, any reservations of giving this experimental jab to children. I mean, from our perspective, my perspective especially, there is one word that comes to my mind, and that's disgusting.
Yeah. Well, wasn't it Hillary Clinton that said we have to pass this bill so we can know what's in it? It's kind of that same mentality. We got to give everyone shots to see how many drop dead, and hopefully none of them do. But we know that the trials were very, very perfunctory. They were not, the sample size was very small. There are a lot of questions about it. But Chris, as you pointed out from the beginning, the good news has always been that kids don't get sick from this. There are very few exceptions. And some parents of young children that have serious problems may want to seek out this kind of medical treatment for their children. But the vast majority, 99.99, et cetera, percent of children in this age group do not even get moderate or severe COVID, much less die. So is this a solution looking for a problem, you have to wonder. And Chris, I hate to break it down like this, but when you look at how many lobbyists Big Pharma has up on Capitol Hill, it actually is hard to question how quickly this thing was approved.
Yeah, I agree, Daniel. This is such uncharted waters on such a big scale that, getting the truth out and pointing out just the insanity of this is difficult as it is. We just hope that parents really think about the decision they have to make, because I don't know if there's a bigger one that they'll ever have to make.
Yeah, and what's going to happen is all of these school boards, and we know now that the school boards are the only bulwark against these domestic terrorists, aka parents, right?
Right.
All of these school boards are now going to mandate that these kids, hey, they're FDA approved, you better take it, you better take it. Oh, you don't want it? Too bad, you better take it. And it's not going to be something that parents and doctors have a decision to make on their own. It's going to be coerced, like every other aspect of this shot, which is probably unprecedented in history, this kind of coerced medical treatment. The only silver lining, and I say this with some reservations, is that this is going to be a big boost for homeschooling. Hopefully parents will check out the Ron Paul curriculum. But with my reservations is my fear, Chris, is that states are going to start cracking down on homeschooling because parents are flocking to homeschooling. They're flocking to alternatives to public school between the forced shots, between the critical race theory, between the pornography that's being foisted onto these kids at a very young age. They're looking for alternatives that reflect their values. Guess what? The machine, the big monster, the totalitarians, they don't like that. They don't brook any dissent. So that's what I worry about, Chris.
Yeah, my final thought on this one is uh, use your minds. If you're against it, use your minds. Be creative. I had a late friend who always told me, he goes, "There's always loopholes. You just have to use your creativity, find them, and be strong." People that went through World War II, I know for my ancestors what they had to do, but they kept their minds on doing the right thing, and the way seems to present itself when you have that attitude.
That's a great ending to that section, Chris. Really, that's a great philosophy. Well, the second thing we want to talk about briefly is today and tomorrow is going to be the appeal hearing of Julian Assange in the UK. He'll have a chance to finally get out of his cell for a little bit, and the hearing is on the extradition. There, U.S. of course is trying to get them to overturn the decision by the UK judge to not allow the extradition on mental health grounds for Julian Assange. There's a lot of new material that's coming up in this. Uh, One of the most important pieces of new information is a report that came out that Yahoo News investigated just, I think it was in September. Revelations that the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency had plotted to kidnap or kill Assange when he was holed up in the embassy in London, the Ecuadorian embassy in London, sought to kill or kidnap him. It shows the depravity of the U.S. government. It shows the viciousness of the U.S. government. And frankly, it's an easy one for us, Chris, because obviously he should not be extradited, nor should he be in prison at all. But these next 2 days are going to be critical ones for Julian Assange.
Right. And, Dr. Paul says it quite often on our show, and it should be repeated forever. And that is that truth is treason in an empire of lies. And if you can't see that we're living in an empire of lies, hopefully you will see it soon. And, we have, there, we should be always grateful to people like Assange, Manning, Snowden, because they literally put their lives on the line. They knew what would happen to them. It did happen to them. And they even knew that they would have to run because they knew that the media is controlled and they would never be portrayed as heroes, for even though they're telling the truth about their own government. Isn't that what we should want, is to know the truth? But they knew that this truth would put their lives in danger, which it has, and they still gave their lives up for this. And it's easy for us as we live our daily lives to forget, but we got to remind ourselves that these people did what they did, and we cannot forget what they have done for our benefit, and certainly not for their physical lives here.
No, of course not. And we know the deterioration, both physically and mentally, of Assange being held and holed up in a tiny room, a tiny cell, a tiny room at the embassy for years and years and years. And what was his crime? Well, what is he being charged with in the U.S.? He's an Australian citizen. He's charged with violating the U.S. Espionage Act. That if that doesn't say everything about what the U.S. empire believes it has jurisdiction over the entire rest of the world and the absurdity of it. But his real crime, of course, was exposing the dark, nasty underbelly of the U.S. empire, of the deep state, when he exposed all of these documents from the CIA and how they were breaking the law on a regular basis. That's when they smelled blood, and that's when they went out for blood. And they're not going to be happy until they get it. So we can hope, we can pray for a miracle these next couple of days, and for this to not be overturned and for him to be released. But we have to also be realistic, Chris.
Yeah, that's true. And we should learn because during this time that we're living in, we all need courage. And it's the easy road is not to have it. You feel safer not to have it. Let somebody else put their neck on the line. And but the way things are closing in on everyone, all of us, not just your neighbors, but all of us, we have to generate that courage within us to do whatever we can to do what is right. Daniel, do you have anything else on
No,
Assange?
these are tough times. I was just thinking the good transition would be for you. You were talking about how we have a controlled media, and that's a great segue into the next one. Chris, go ahead with this.
That's
first
right.
story.
We read, and this caught our attention, billionaire investors such as George Soros and Reid Hoffman of LinkedIn are creating or supporting or investing in Good Information Inc. to fight disinformation. Now, hopefully, most people that have watched the Ron Paul Liberty Report probably realize the value of information in this disinformation scam, because what you see and what you're supposed to see is one side only from every single angle. The same message, whether you're looking in movies, television, politicians, corporations, the same exact message. You're not supposed to see anything otherwise. But there's also another prong to this, and that's social pressure. A lot of us, a lot of people, we're social beings. And if your neighbors pressure you to do X, Y, or Z, you're supposed to give in. The problem is all your neighbors are seeing the same exact message. So they're hitting you with the same thing. And the goal of all of this is for you not to think for yourself. You're supposed to obey whatever the experts tell you. And, that's, you honestly make yourself pray when you do that, when you can't think, well, what's this disinformation? Why am I only allowed to see this and no other competing ideas? That sounds fishy to me. What do you think, Daniel?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing about totalitarianism, which is what these people are actually pushing, the thing about totalitarianism is that at its core, it's extraordinarily fragile. That's why they can't allow any alternative opinions. They can't allow any outlet, any person to stand up and have an opinion that goes against the narrative that they want. And that's why there's this attack on alternative sources of media. I don't even like to use alternative. But this is an era, Chris, where Americans' trust in the mainstream, the legacy media, is at an all-time low. Americans know they're being lied to nonstop. So the totalitarians, their answer is to censor any alternative, to destroy any alternative. And that's what this whole bogus Facebook leaks, Facebook whistleblower thing is all about. Here's a whistleblower um, who's been funded by the same people who want to silence everyone else, coming in and saying, well, Facebook isn't censoring enough. And that's exactly what Soros and Hoffman are doing here. Ironically, Hoffman has funded in the past an organization called New Knowledge, which itself created fake misinformation ads in the Alabama Senate race not too long ago. Fake ads purporting to be from Russian sources to undermine and bolster to undermine the opposition and bolster their candidates. So these are creators of fake news. George Soros has spent his entire philanthropic life tied shoulder to shoulder with the CIA, doing regime change overseas, making sure that no government is elected overseas that has any sort of political views that the US disagrees with. And that's exactly now what he's doing here at home. He spent 25, 30 years overseas doing this kind of regime change, color revolutions, information stranglehold, and that's what their goal is here. They've got big bucks, Chris, big bucks, and we don't have anything in our pockets but truth on our side. It's going to be very difficult. Thank goodness there are alternative sites that are popping up like Rumble and Odyssey, Parler, and others. Let's hope they can stand up against the pressure to censor, and let's hope that many more. They can't, as we're quoting Dr. Paul here, all the armies of the world can't stop an idea whose time has come. So we have to be those ideological armies.
Yeah, that's excellent and true. And just to show how serious they are about this, recall that the president of the United States was silenced on social media. That's
Yeah.
how far it was taken. The president of the United States, it's, he's normally treated like a Caesar, the most powerful man in the world. People would have pictures of presidents in their homes, and it's in all the buildings and schools, and he was silenced by social media. That is some serious stuff, that even what people consider the most powerful man in the world, when they can't let him speak to the people that he supposedly represents, that shows how far down, or how far, how serious they are taking this censoring stuff.
Yeah, and well, I was just gonna say, and on Twitter, if you don't like Trump, you can not follow him, right? Or you can, you don't have to see you didn't have to see any one of his tweets ever, ever, ever. But that's not what they want. They don't want to keep people from getting offended. They want to keep people from getting information, and that's the danger of this new thing. And of course, the people in charge of this new entity say, oh no, we're not only democratic operatives, we're open to the right, we're open to supporting the bulwark, which of course is Bill Kristol's outlet. He's about as conservative, or whatever you want to call it, as so it's the whole thing is a joke, the whole thing is dangerous, but hopefully it'll fizzle.
Go ahead, Daniel, to the next one.
Yeah, okay. So the last one we want to talk a little bit about is the whole January 6th issue, and we're not going to go into all the details. I mean, if you go down this rabbit hole, there is so much evidence, so much that you need to see. I just wanted to focus on one little aspect of it, Chris, and that was Thomas Massey, of course, the greatest member of the U.S. House of Representatives at the moment. Although I guess that's not saying much, but he's still our hero. And he had the courage to question our wonderful Attorney General Merrick Garland, or Garland Merrick. I can never get his name right. He's a weirdo. But he showed him this tape of this guy who was seen at several different locations, saying the same thing on the January 5th and January 6th, which is, we've got to go into the Capitol, everybody, into the Capitol. The next day, on the day of, it's over this way, guys. We got to go in. I might get arrested, but we got to go in. Over and over and over. And I think Tucker Carlson had Darren Beatty on, who made the point that he's like where's Waldo? He's everywhere, making this point. And Massey said, he talked about, well, how many FBI informants and operatives were in the crowd? Was this guy one of them? Why hasn't he been arrested? They've been on a manhunt. Hundreds of people rotting away in jail for nothing more than setting foot in, quote, the people's house, right? For months and months and months on end. And here's a guy who's on tape over and over and over, literally organizing the so-called breach, the so-called insurrection. And as far as we all know, he remains free. He remains not indicted. And it was a good question. Of course, the Attorney General didn't answer it as usual. But it does seem that the narrative is falling apart, and every new video that we see, Chris, shows more and more of the undermining of the official narrative that this was an insurrection. And that's probably why they don't want to release any of these 14,000 hours that they have of surveillance of it.
That's right. And kudos, of course, to the courageous Thomas Massey, because this goes back to the whole disinformation thing. He's bringing to light information that people are not supposed to see. You're supposed to have one narrative on January 6th. But anytime you see any protests anywhere, you have to ask yourself, why am I being shown this? Every weekend, there are protests of millions of people all over Europe. There are protests in New York City. You're not being showed those. How come you're supposed to see these protests but not see other protests? So that's, the question that should run, it always runs through my mind. Why am I being shown this on a loop over and over? Why? Who benefits from this? And the second thing is, what am I not seeing? What is not being shown to me? What is being hidden from me? And that's what Congressman Massey is trying to show the American people. The thing about truth is you always have to go find it. The people that are watching us right now, you did not find us from the mainstream media. They surely did not tell you to come watch the Ron Paul Liberty Report. We each, all of us, have to put the effort in to find the truth and discover it, and then share it.
That's a great point, Chris. A really good point. And I would just say, look into these four stories. There's plenty of stuff out there. I think these are the four important stories. Chris, do you want to make a closing statement before we end the show?
Yeah, I guess a big picture is, our freedoms are slowly being taken away, and it seems like this new system that they're trying to erect is that we have no freedom, we just have privileges. And those privileges are what the select few are willing to grant us, and they could change what those privileges are and the terms at any time. If it's 3 shots now, it could be 4 shots tomorrow. We just have to sit, wait for our instructions from the experts, and then obey. And this is very bad. This is a very bad new normal that we do not support. We support the normal of our God-given rights, our ability to think, make our own decisions. And, we're going to do our part to make sure that that's what prevails.
Thanks, Chris. These are dark times, and it's easy to get discouraged. Many of us, given the choice, would rather not live in times like these, where you have to fight constantly, it seems, constantly being lied to. But we have to take courage. And Chris, I know you feel the same way. When we get together at conferences and have meetings and get-togethers, we do find that we are encouraged by others. So we have to keep contact with people, keep in contact with people. And that's what we try to do here on the show as best as we can, being imperfect vessels as we are. But we do want to thank all of our viewers who do tune into the Liberty Report. We're grateful for you spending a little bit of time every day with us, and we hope you'll continue to watch the program.